Attention, attention, stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh my God!
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
We were discussing the DeSantis-Disney fight, which, by the way, I predict will actually help his opponent in the gubernatorial race that's going on down there. And I don't know if anybody on the GOP has noticed this. And maybe they're not used to noticing it because they apparently think that Donald Trump has the body of Rambo. But DeSantis is kind of a dweeb. He really is. He's kind of like the Tucker Carlson version of macho. It's very weird. You know what I mean? And the standard for what, sets the tone as masculinity doesn't even come into the conversation until you said it and don't meet it.
Right.
Right? That's all, that's the only thing that, is if you go, like if you're on our side of the aisle where, what qualifies as manhood has a lot of flexibility and can absorb a lot. That's the strength of manhood, in my estimation, is that you don't have to worry about, like, that's why I grew up with Paul Stanley as one of my male role models, during the makeup years especially. Like, yep. But I don't even have to worry about that. But when you set the standard that it's some sort of, like obvious butch nonsense that's very narrowly defined, then you have a problem like Madison Cawthorn had this week. Oops. Did you see the pictures, Johnny Million?
Oh yeah.
Oh indeed. Where if you don't know, Madison Cawthorn had some vacation pictures when he was on a cruise come out where he was in women's lingerie posing with I think a glass of white wine, which I think was the most offensive thing to Lindsey Graham. Because the idea is, somebody said you can't, we can tell that Paul Stanley was one of my, because you think, is that the hair? Does that give us away? Anyways, so I want to get to this. This is a quote from Orwell. Now we're used to hearing all kinds of 1984 quotes from Orwell. And I would like to say that this was written about the same time he's writing 84 and Animal Farm and those kind of things. And it's from his book, The Road to Wigan Pier, which itself...
Mrs.
Wiggins, you come in here right now. I'm just, now I've got flashbacks of her sharpening pencils. Thanks, Johnny Million. This is him talking about socialism decades ago. I am, Orwell wrote, making out a case for the sort of person who is in sympathy with the fundamental aims of socialism, but who in practice always takes flight when socialism is mentioned. Question a person of this type, and you will often get the semi-frivolous answer, I don't object to socialism, but I do object to socialists. Logically, it's a poor argument, but it carries weight with many people. As with the Christian religion, the worst argument for socialism is its adherents. Orwell himself was a socialist, and he argues first that socialism in its developed form is a theory confined entirely to the relatively well-off middle class. In its language, it is formal, stilted, wholly distant from the language of ordinary citizens, spoken by people who are several rungs above their audience and with no intention of giving up that status. It is doubtful whether anything describable as proletarian literature now exists, but a good music hall comedian comes nearer to producing it than any socialist writer I can think of. In the most provocative segment of the entire book, Orwell also cites, and just take a moment, everybody, settle into your chair, take a deep breath, because you might feel seen all of a sudden in this. The really disquieting prevalence of cranks wherever socialists are gathered together. One sometimes gets the impression that the mere words socialism and communism draw toward them with magnetic force every fruit juice drinker, nudist, sandal wearer, sex maniac, Quaker, nature's cure quack, pacifist, and feminist in England. And he notes that the prospectus for a summer socialist school in which attendees are asked if they prefer a vegetarian diet. That was, what, 50 years ago? No, not even 70 years ago. How recent does that sound? I mean, but for some of the terminology by a little bit.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he was talking about. Isn't that amazing? Right? They're pulled like a magnet. And again, not the problem of people who believe in socialist principles so much. But well, Holly in our chat says he forgot the gays. I'll have you note that at that time, nudist, sandal wearer, and sex maniac, it's assumed that gay is in there, if you know what I mean. At that period, remember, this is a wink and a nod society, so obviously, sandal wearer. Okay. By the way, if you're wearing sandals and you're not an apostle, you are useless in an emergency, and I can't deal with you. If you're wearing
Oh,
sandals in
yeah.
public, you are useless. If anything bad happens, you're basically, sandals are the sign. Are you saying I'm tapping out? If anything, if there's a mass shooter or a car crashes into this building or the ship starts to sink or whatever, I'm wearing sandals. I can't.
You have to.
Yes, and if you have sandals with socks, even worse, because you'll have no
Right.
tread whatsoever, and you'll slip even worse. And now I've got to help you too. So, wear them at the beach, and then when you leave the beach, put some shoes on. So, but that's this fruit juice drinker, which I think is amazing.
That's horrible.
Nudist, sandal wearer, sex maniac, Quaker, nature cure quack, pacifist and feminist in England, and I'm wondering right now if Marianne Williamson is watching this live. I'm sure she just threw her laptop across the room. But this is crucial to it, is that and he's talking about the problem with trying to get these ideals, which he believed in, across the finish line, and what stopped it.
Right.
What he thought of as, and I quote, the cranks around it. And by the way, this like when he's talking about the vegetarian diet at the socialist camp, he goes, that kind of thing by itself sufficient to alienate plenty of decent people, and their instinct is perfectly sound. For the food crank is by definition a person willing to cut himself off from human society in hopes of adding 5 years onto the life of his carcass. A person
Wow.
out of touch with common humanity. I just find that, like, fascinatingly stark talk about this.
He has some opinions.
Yeah. I mean, it was the nature of it. I mean, he went and fought with socialists in Spain. He became, he literally took up arms with the socialists in Spain, and became so disillusioned after that experience that the people he was fighting for became so authoritarian and awful that when he went back to England, he was basically just demoralized by the ideas. He had literally taken lives to get this to happen. And when these folks got in power, they acted worse than the people he was fighting, in his estimation. And hence 1984 is effectively an anti-central government, anti-socialist screed at that period of time. And yet, he still believed in what are effectively the tenets of things that ended up being the NHS, which he believed in. So he started
Crazy
working.
that he does both. That he straddled the line like that.
And so the NHS itself is a great example of the salami slicing towards what they were trying to set as goals in the past, in a situation where they were under a monarchy. You had to get points on the board. You had to move the ball down the field and show people that it worked. because the NHS they've been trying to get rid of it for a long time. You know, every time a conservative group comes in, they try to get rid of the NHS. And it's really hard because people have been impressed by it.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do. You have to, like the infrastructure bill, like the rescue package, those kind of things. You have to get these wins on the board and then have people wake up one day of their own free will and go, this helped me. I can't live as a liar. We'll be back right after this. In the next hour, Philip's going to be joining us. Philip Ittner is going to be joining us from Lviv with an update on what's going on in Ukraine and the new Russian plan for denazing everybody in the whole world. Apparently, they're everywhere. We'll be back.